Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. We are missing Alex this week. He is taking a well-deserved break, but we'll be here talking all awesome Chicago sports. But first, let's get to our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com and get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right. Last week we talked about the NFL draft, and that was awesome. Love the NFL draft. It's one of my favorite times of the year. But we pretty much only talked about the NFL draft. And listen, I'm okay with that because I love football. I love the draft. I love off-season things. I love the games as well. But whenever your team is not good, i.e. the Bears, it's really easy to focus on the off-season things where you're trying to improve your team. So looking at the salary cap, looking at the number of draft picks, look at the players that they bring in. And it's just all excitement because at this point, everybody is tied and anybody has the opportunity to win the Super Bowl because the season hasn't started. So we neglected baseball last week, and I want to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to start with the Cubs. The Cubs got off to a really nice start to the season, and I think some people got a little too ahead of themselves with this because, listen, this is a much improved team from last year. That last year team was bad. This team is a much, much better team, but they're not competing for a World Series at this point. They're going to win some games, but as we saw on that last road trip where they just got spanked by the Nationals and the Marlins, that there are flaws to this team. And I think we knew that is the starting pitching is really good. They've got some players that can hit the baseball, but they lack power as a whole. They lack power, and also their bullpen is suspect. And those things have reared their ugly heads. So fans have been clamoring for the Cubs to bring up Matt Mervis because to them they've deemed Matt Mervis as the savior of this offense. Because Matt Mervis was absolutely mashing the baseball all season long in the minors. Just basically anything you threw at him, Matt Mervis was mashing. And guess what? You got what you asked for. Matt Mervis came up for this weekend series. And it seems like he's probably going to stick around. Because that would do a disservice to him if he's not going to play. He should be having at-bats. He's a young player. He needs to grow. But honestly, the results have been okay. He's other than today where I'm recording this Sunday. So it was the 5-4 loss in 4 extra innings against the Marlins. Mervis went 2 for 6. But he had been batting about 250. So you've got some strikeouts there. I think he struck out in every single game so far that he's played. In a couple games, multiple strikeouts. He's still a young player. Let's not put all of our hopes on Matt Mervis, but let's also not run him out of town. Depending on what the game looks like, and if he has a multi-strikeout game or a hitless game, he's a young player. The other player the Cubs brought up is a player that honestly we didn't know what to expect because of so many injury issues. Miguel Amaya was called up when Yan Gomes went on the IL for the concussion. So we've had Miguel Amaya, who has just been fun to have on the team. He's not Yan Gomes, but he's played fine. He's batting actually a little bit better than Matt Mervis. And you got he was involved in the walk-off against the Marlins, comeback walk-off. So that was an exciting thing, and he's a fiery young player, and it's nice to see. The other name we keep getting bandied around is Christopher Morel because he is absolutely killing it down in AAA. And should I say over in AAA? It's down as far as league levels, but it's over as far as geographical areas. It's Iowa, but I digress. Christopher Morel has been tearing it up, and fans have been like, why don't we bring him up? And listen, Christopher Morel is tearing it up. He's a nice young player. We saw some really good things out of him last year, and we saw where he struggled last year as well. The issue with Christopher Morel versus Matt Mervis and Miguel Amaya is Amaya came up to fill a hole due to injury. Mervis came up because there was an opening at first base. That's the position he plays. Christopher Morel is like a super utility guy. And the issue is, where is he going to play? He's played all three outfield spots. And you're really locked in with Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, and Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger's been playing great. I mean, that defense is impeccable. And offense, he's played pretty well. Way better than I think that we had hoped. He plays middle infield, but you've got Horner and Dansby Swanson in the middle of the infield. Not going to take one of their spots. And he doesn't pitch or catch. You brought up Matt Mervis to play first. And you've got Patrick Wisdom at third, and he's your best power hitter. He's struggling with the batting average, but he's leading your team in home runs. So there's really no spot for Morel, and he needs to be playing every day. If you look through all of the numbers that he's putting up in the minors, which are great, and it's great to see him have success, there's one number that he really needs to work on because he's striking out 30% of the time, over 30% of the time in Iowa. And if he's striking out over 30% of the time in AAA, that number's going to go way up in the majors. And, the Cubs' success has been on putting the ball into play. You can't just have Christopher Morel striking out 30, 40, 50% of the time. He's got to go down. He's got to stay down and really work on some things because we know he can hit the baseball. It's just cutting down on those strikeout numbers. But after that bad road trip, you had Miami come back to Chicago, and a little bit of a different situation is the Cubs ended up taking 2 or 3 in that series, and I want to say it could have been three out of 3 because it very well could have been, but it could have easily been 1 out of 3 because the Cubs came back in that second game, but they did come back in the third game to tie it up, send it to extras, went 14 innings where the Cubs ended up losing. But the Cubs have played really well, and this series you saw Justin Steele continue to look excellent. I mean, he's got to be one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. I know we're not talking career wise. We're talking about this season. He's 5-0 with a 1.45 ERA, which is just stellar. Drew Smiley had another really good outing, and Hayden Wesneski pitched really well today. So you're getting good quality starting pitching from this team, but it's just been the hitting, and you've got a bunch of guys that are collectively or individually hitting well. It's just as a team, you're not producing those into runs, and part of that is just the home run numbers. I mean, the Cubs just as a team don't hit a lot of home runs, and you get guys on base and they're scoring runs a good way. You know, I've bitched in the past, and you've heard me all if you listen to the show, always complaining how the Cubs in the last couple of years, what a large percent uh, of the Cubs runs have been by the home run, because you can't live and die by the home run. You just can't. You've got to hit home runs, because that's just you score quick runs that way. I mean, look at we'll get to that, but the White Sox game yesterday, one home run turns that game around. But the Cubs, they just don't have a lot of those big boppers. And so you're scoring a lot of small ball runs, which is great. Those are really important. You just gotta add in some pop, and weather's starting to get warm now. I'm anticipating some more home runs to start coming, because in those warmer months, there's less wind blowing in. The baseballs go a little further. You expect more home runs, but they just um, you really need to get more home runs as if you're gonna be successful. And they played well, and the guys are individually hitting well. It's just you're not getting those home runs. Um, and let's see, home run leaders for the Cubs. Patrick Wisdom with 11, Ballinger with 7, Yan Gomes with 5, who's on the injured list, Happ with 4, Velasquez, who's not even a regular everyday player, with 3, Mancini with 3, Horner with 2, Hosmer, who's probably going to get DFA'd, with 2, and Dansby Swanson with 2. So you're some of your guys that Ian Happ, is he a big home run hitter? No, but he does have home run power. He's not hitting a ton. Um, Horner and Swanson are guys that can put up 18 to 20 home runs, just really not on that pace as of yet. And Trey Mancini's a guy that we know has home run power, just has to start getting the barrel of the bat on there. And I think you're going to see the problems get better, because this team can get guys on base. They can score small ball runs. They just need those innings where instead of driving in 1, they're driving in 3, 4, 5 with a home run and a small ball. But the pitching's been great, hitting's been good, just not with power. And I mean, that's kind of why you brought Matt Mervis up, because he does have that power, adds another element of power to that game. For the Cubs, this has been the bullpen, and they've had games where they've come in and closed things down. They've had other games where they just absolutely blow it, and as a whole, that's been the Achilles heel of this team. What else about the Cubs? They've got a good problem brewing. Is Kyle Hendricks is actually doing rehab starts. He's done 2 rehab starts in the minors. They haven't been very good, but the positive thing is he's not had any pain, and we'll see how the command starts coming along. But in 2 games, which is 4 1/3 innings, so they were short games, he's given up 10 runs. So not as crisp and clean as you would like. But if we can get Kyle Hendricks anywhere near the form that we've seen Kyle Hendricks over the years, that would be a big boost to this team. I don't know where exactly he fits in, but it would be a nice problem to have. Too many good pitchers. And then lastly, with the Cubs, is you've got St. Louis coming to town. It's your first time seeing them this year, and I recognize the Cardinals are not doing it very well, and they're towards the bottom of the standings in the division. But this team will quickly find themselves doing right against the Cubs. I don't know what kind of wizardry and magic and Harry Potter shit this is. They always find a way to do well against the Cubs. And this is coming from, news. And listen, I don't like to shit on ex-players from the Cubs, but when they start flinging the shit, I'm into this. Wilson Contreras talks so much shit, and he's been sort of demoted. They're taking him off catching duty, making him designated hitter. And they paid this guy, $20 million a year to be their next catcher, and they're realizing it's just not working out. And that's why the Cubs moved on from him. Would you have liked to have those power numbers and that bat in the lineup if you're the Cubs? Yeah, but not at $20 million a season. And how do you explain to him, hey, we like your bat, but behind the plate, you're not very good. And our pitchers are having a lot more success with Yan Gomes behind the plate than they are with when you were behind the plate. And that's been the philosophy of the Cubs' new regime, new post Theo Epstein regime, is that they're trying to move more towards having defensive-minded catchers. Because you're paying these pitchers a lot of money, and starting pitching is so vital, you might as well give them every bit of opportunity they have to be the best is by giving them a defensive catcher. Even if that means with the designated hitter, you feel like, okay, well, we get enough offense, even if we have a catcher that's not very good at hitting. And luckily, Yan Gomes has been hitting fairly well. He's second or third on the team in home runs. So, to say that we don't really miss Wilson Contreras, but we don't. And he's kind of been demoted in St. Louis. So we'll get to see him for the first time in a Cardinals uniform against our Cubs. But one last thing I guess I want to say about the Cubs is this team has been fun compared to last year or the year before because you really are starting to sense the chemistry with this team. Guys are playing really well as a unit. You're not last year. You saw just individual guys going up to plate or whatever. It just this season you just feel a synergy with this team and energy with them, and I really like that. And I think that they're actually building something pretty special with this franchise, and I'm excited to see how it goes. And I don't have delusions that this year they could be a World Series team. They would be really lucky to make the postseason. Really lucky. I'm not anticipating it, but they're trending way in the right direction. There's a lot of things to like. On the other side of town, a sports writer called the White Sox the Bermuda Triangle. Lousy hitting, awful pitching, and horrendous defense. That is a really rough thing to say about an organization. But is it true? It's not true. This White Sox team has really struggled. The pitching just hasn't been there. Their defense is horrible. And for a team that has a lot of guys that can hit the baseball, they're not really hitting the baseball. It's been a really tough situation. You just DFA Jake Diekman, who was one of the holdovers from last season. And I'm not saying it's not worth DFA because he's been terrible, but this is a guy that your general manager touted as one of your strong bullpen players going into the season, and that's why they didn't add bullpen arms because they had Jake Diekman, and he was terrible. So doesn't that reflect poorly on you as the GM? Is if that's the kind of things you say, and a month into the season, it's already looking like a flop. Um, you talked about how we've got Oscar Colas and he's ready to go, and he came up and started the season and just was not playing very well at all. Got sent back down to AAA. Your injury issues have not subsided. Tim Anderson, he's hurt. Eloy out 4 to 6 weeks with an appendectomy. Yohan Moncada is hurt. Jake Berger is hurt. Crochet is still hurt. You've just got a lot of injuries there. None of those worked out. And I recognize Eloy's injury is not something that a trainer could prevent. It's appendectomy needed. Appendectomy is needed. You can't control that. But he's been a guy that's been hurt a lot in his career, soft tissue type injuries. It's just really been a struggle. And when you hear these guys talk, they don't sound like they're a good team going through a slump. They sound like a frustrated team that's just going down the tubes, and that really sucks. Kenny Williams came out, was talking about, he's really frustrated. But damn it, Kenny, you're part of the problem. How long have you been here? These problems aren't new problems. You're part of the problem. If you're somebody that has enough power to be part of the solution and things aren't going well, then guess what? You're part of the problem. And I'm not into that front office, so I don't know how much is Rick Hahn not being good at his job versus he's handcuffed and sort of has these directives that he has to follow first and foremost, and then does the job to the best of his ability within some constraints. Because that's a possibility. Jerry could be like, no, we're hiring my drunk friend to be the manager. And, I recognize he stepped down last year. But, when that situation went down, we all know that Tony La Russa was hired by Jerry, and the GM was just saddled with that guy. We don't really DFA guys because we paid him. We want to squeeze something out of him. There's constraints, I'm sure, to his job, but I don't know where the balance lies of, he's a bad GM versus he's just got some really tight constraints. I don't know. But Kenny has less constraints and is higher up, and he's been a failure too. And Jerry's just absolutely failing as a baseball owner. And I agree with the White Sox fans. Sell the team. Sell the damn team. The reports are now that Lucas Giolito is, if they are out of things by the trade deadline, which the way they're shaping up, they're going to be, Lucas Giolito is going to be on the trade block, and if not, he's not coming back next year. They're going to look to part ways. I don't know where they're going to get the starting pitching from. I know you don't want to pay Lucas Giolito because the last couple of years have been not so great compared to the previous couple. But you've got to have MLB caliber pitchers, and you just don't have a lot in that farm system. What else? I guess as far as good news, today there was the rubber match against the Cincinnati Reds, and man, did the White Sox come out and open a can of whoop ass. They had an 11-run second inning and just trounced Cincinnati 17-4. Kopech didn't pitch a very good game at all. but it didn't matter when you gave up 17 runs, or you scored 17 runs. And 17 runs on just 2 home runs. So there was quite a few doubles. Um, and you're filling third baseman Alberto. He had Hanser Alberto. He had a game on him, 4 for 4 with 2 doubles and a home run. Like that's huge. Big game for him. Gavin Sheets had a nice game. Uh, and guys just came through and hit. Luis Robert went 2 for 2. Vaughn went 3 for 5. Grandal 2 for 4. You got really guys just came out and woke their bats up and won this series. Positive note. Also, Tim Anderson is coming back soon, which is going to be nothing but a good thing because he's the heart and soul of your offense. And finally, after the cancer scare and we didn't know if Liam Hendricks would pitch again this season, made his rehab start in the minors and pitched a scoreless inning. And that's phenomenal news. You don't want to see anybody with cancer, but for him to beat it and then to come back and so quickly and be able to play baseball is just fantastic news. So congratulations to him. And one final baseball note I wanted to make is Vida Blue passed away. He's a pitcher I really loved watching. A lot of younger fans won't know Vida Blue, but he was a really good baseball player. He passed away yesterday, so rest in peace, Vida Blue. Bulls, there's really nothing to talk about. The NBA playoffs are still going on, but as far as hockey, I'm recording this on Sunday, like I'd said, but this coming week is the NHL draft lottery. So we'll find out exactly who Connor Bedard is going to be playing for next year. This week we'll know. Unless somebody does a boneheaded move and decides to pick somebody over Connor Bedard. But I don't think that's the case. I think there's 10 teams that can or nine or 10 teams that are able to move up and get him in the draft, a lottery. So I think all those teams are going to be teams that take Connor Bedard. But we'll find out. And just a primer, the Blackhawks can go all the way up to number 1 and to be able to get Connor Bedard, or they could fall down to the 5th position, and that's their best odds are, I think, is getting the 4th pick. Just the way the NHL draft lottery is currently working is everybody that didn't make the playoffs is in the lottery for the 1st pick, but you can only move up. Sorry, they're all in the lottery, but the highest you can move up is 10 spots. So if you have the 12th worst record, you can only move up 10 spots to the number 2 pick. Can't move up to number 1. And although the team with the worst record has, marginal better odds of getting Connor Bedard, where they get extra bonus is that any team that is further than 10 spots away from the number 1 pick, if they were to win that draft lottery, the pick automatically goes to the team with the worst record. So they get those added few percentage points. So essentially the team with the worst record is like 25.5% chance of getting Connor Bedard. And I think the Blackhawks are like 13%. It's not great. It's not the end of the world, though. So here's hoping that next week when we talk, that we're talking about Connor Bedard. And then I guess I want to wrap this up by talking a little bit of Chicago Bears. We had rookie minicamp this week, and there was a couple of veterans that were invited. Like Doug Kramer was invited because he was a rookie last year, but he got a season-ending injury. during early in training camp, so he missed out on all that. So it's an opportunity to him to get in with some of the younger players and refamiliarize himself with the Bears coaching staff. But you've really got the first opportunity to see all of them in their new uniforms with their numbers, and for the beat writers and the TV people to talk to the players and get a sense of their personalities. So that's always nice for the rookie mini camp. And the Bears brought in, like we talked about last week, a undrafted free agent class that was pretty big, of guys that you're hoping for a few folks that come in and actually contribute well. So you're looking at like somebody like a Jack Sanborn to come in and make the squad and actually compete, or Josh Blackwell or Jalon Jones, guys that are just undrafted rookies that can come in, make the squad, and contribute as a player. So there's a few guys on this practice squad that you're excited about and have the possibility to see make this roster. So I want to. We're really early in this, but we haven't even had. We're a couple months away from training camp. We're like 2 months away from training camp, but I want to go through the roster as it currently stands. We're like, I don't know, 100 players on this team, and we're going to cut it down eventually to 53-man roster, and then your practice squad players. But I want to quickly kind of go through it way early on and see how things are stacking up, as what projected starting lineup is and who the early projected final squad is. So I want to start with special teams because that's going to be pretty easy. You've got 2 punters on the squad, Trenton Gill and Ryan Anderson, who they signed. I don't know why you'd move on from Trenton Gill. He makes as little money as you can possibly pay him. He was a undrafted rookie free agent, or was no, sorry, they drafted him in the 7th round. So he's just making very little money, and he played pretty well last year. So I expect it to be Trenton Gill. You're only going to keep 1 punter. You do have a little bit of a kicking competition. You have Cairo Santos, and then you brought in undrafted rookie Andre Zmyt. Hopefully I pronounced that name right. His last name is Szmyt. So there's a lot of consonants in a row. I was not sure how to pronounce that, but I think it's Andre Zmyt. And I expect Cairo Santos to win this. I know there's a lot of fans that are talking about Robbie Gould, but I don't see that reunion happening. I wish Robbie the best, but I don't see that reunion happening. And then finally, Patrick Scales is our long snapper. And I'm sure he's the one long snapper, and I'm sure he's going to make the roster. Offense. You're probably, I'm guessing, is you might adjust these by 1 or 2 players here or there, but right now you have 6 tight ends on your roster. I expect them to keep 3. So Cole Kmet, Robert Tonyan, and then those guys are locks. You probably keep 1 more, and it's between Chase Allen, Jake Tonjes, Steven Carlson, and Damian Caffrey. I'm going to say Chase Allen probably makes that, and you get, but that's a really wide open competition, I think, after Kmet and Tonyan. Quarterback, you've got 4 quarterbacks on your roster currently. You're only going to keep 2. Justin Fields is obvious, and PJ Walker should be obvious. And then you've got Nathan Peterman and Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent was a a D2 superstar in Division II college football that the Bears signed as an undrafted rookie. A lot of promising things about him. It's a little weird because he is straight. I mean, he's got some athleticism, but he is really a pocket passer, and fitting him in with Walker and Fields, um, I don't know how that works. Building this offense around one guy and kind of then having to switch gears with another guy if that was necessary. But he's a good story, and I wish him well. But it's probably going to be Nathan Peterman as your practice squad quarterback. You currently have 5 running backs and 2 fullbacks on the roster, and I think you're going to keep 4 running backs, 1 fullback. So your fullbacks, you got Kari Blossomgame and Robert Burns. I think Blossomgame is going to make the roster. And then your running backs, Khalil Herbert, Tristan Ebner, Travis Homer, Deontay Foreman, Roshan Johnson. Khalil Herbert was really surprisingly good last year. Not surprisingly, he really showed up. So I expect him to make this roster. Travis Homer was brought in to be a special teams guy. I would imagine he's going to make the roster. Deontay Foreman was a free agent acquisition. I like the way he runs. I'm sure he's going to make it. And then Roshan Johnson was a draft pick that I really liked, and I would be shocked if he doesn't make the squad. Wide receivers. You've got a lot of wide receivers in volume. You're probably going to keep 6 wide receivers. So it's a lock. Chase Claypool, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney are your 3. After that, I think it's going to be Bayless Jones Jr., Tyler Scott, and Equanimous St. Brown, with leaving behind off the roster Dante Pettis, Simba Webster, Aaron Cruikshank, Doris Fountain, and Joe Reed, and Thyreek Pitts. And then finally, your offensive line. I think your starting offensive line is going to be Braxton Jones as left tackle, Tevin Jenkins at left guard, Cody Whitehair at center, Nate Davis at right guard, and Darnell Wright at right tackle. I think, barring injury, I would be absolutely shocked if that's not the starting rotation or starting offensive line. Where it gets interesting is I think this is going to be a wide open competition for who's the backups. I think you're going to keep 9 offensive linemen, so that leaves 4 reserve guys. So you probably have a swing tackle, a guard that could potentially shift out to tackle if necessary, and a guard center player. So I actually chose Alex Leatherwood, Doug Kramer, Jatir Carter, and Larry Borum as your 4 reserve offensive linemen, which would leave Nick Amoa, Lucas Patrick, Dieter Eiselin, Josh Lugg, Bobby Haskins, Gabriel Hui, Laurent Metz, and Kellen Deach as off the roster. Defense. Let's start with cornerback. I think you're going to keep 6 cornerbacks on this team. And right now you've got Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevens as your 3 starters because you're mostly going to be running nickel. So I think Kyler Gordon is going to just get kicked into the slot corner and let him just run at that one position. And Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson are going to be your outside guys. So it's picking your next 3. You've got options are Josh Blackwell, Greg Stroman, Michael Ojemudia, Kendall Vildor, Jalen Jones, and Terrell Smith. Terrell Smith was a draft pick. I think they like him. I think he'll get an opportunity to make this roster. And then Blackwell played well last year. I think you give him the opportunity. And then it's probably between Kendall Vildor and Jalen Jones. Jalen Jones is younger, makes less money. So I'm going to go with Jalon Jones. You got 4 safeties that you're probably going to keep. So Jaquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson, and I think it's going to be Elijah Hicks and Kendall Williamson. I think those will be your 4 safeties. I'm guessing keep 6 linebackers. So you're going to keep Tremaine Edmonds, obviously, T.J. Edwards, Jack Sanborn, and Noah Sewell, who was your draft pick. And then you get 2 other guys, probably DeMarcus Gates, Sterling Weatherford, my guess, early on. Defensive end, you're probably going to keep 5. I think it's going to be Travis Gibson, Dominique Robinson, DeMarcus Walker, Jerry Green, and Rasheem Green. And defensive tackles, I think you keep 4. And it's going to be Andrew Billings, Justin Jones, Zach Pickens, and Gervon Dexter. And speaking of Gervon Dexter, one of my criticisms of him watching the film was there was a lot of times where he had a really, really slow get off from the snap. And he was actually asked about it during rookie minicamp. And I liked his answer. He talked about how at Florida he was asked to do different things. And honestly, he was sort of mirroring the guard and center, what they did. So he had to react rather than just, attack after the draft or after the snap. So I think they're really going to work on that, and you'll probably see a much improved player because it's clear from what the Bears were trying to do is they weren't so much looking at college production, because sometimes you can just be a good football player and be proficient at a skill and do it in college and high school and be well at it. In the NFL, you can't just be a good football player. You also have to be a really good athlete. You need to be fast. You need to be strong, because if you're just good at the skill, like, oh, I can run this route really tight and catch a pass. If you're somebody that just can't take the beating, you're going to get clobbered out there by guys, because they're going to try to tear your head off. If you're a linebacker and you're like, I'm really good at diagnosing plays and understanding what's going to happen and reading and reacting, but you're just too slow to get to it, who cares? You're not capable of playing. So the Bears really have a type. They're looking for really long, athletic players. And a lot of these guys, like Pickens and Gervon Dexter, they're guys that they've identified as, hey, we think we can make them even better pros than they were college players, and they were good college players. We think we can make them even better pros by taking those athletic traits and putting them in our system. And, kind of looking at it, I think Gervon Dexter is going to be your one technique, your nose. They talked about how they were probably going to give both Pickens and Gervon Dexter split responsibilities between the 2, or the 1 and the 3 technique. I think he's going to be mostly that 1 technique, and I think Pickens is going to be your future 3. But as it stands now, Justin Jones and Andrew Billings are probably going to be your starting defensive linemen. Andrew Billings at your 1, and Justin Jones your 3 technique. And I think that's going to be the reality there. And Pickens and Dexter are going to be guys that you see improve along the way. And I think when you look at this Bears draft class, you're going to ultimately see several good players come out of this draft. You just may have to have a little patience. Like Tyreek Stevenson, very good football player. I think you're going to like things you see out of him. But cornerback, I think they're going to have to shield him a little bit. Luckily, you've got Jalon Johnson, who's very good and also a veteran. and Kyler Gordon, who's now going into his second year. I think you can shield Tyreek Stevenson a little bit, but he's going to get a little bit of trial by fire because I think he's going to be starting as a rookie. Noah Sewell's in a nice spot because he's not going to be asked to play every down because you've got 3 starting linebackers. The 2 defensive tackles, Pickens and Dexter, I think those are guys that in a year, next year and definitely the year after, you're going to see some really good things out of those guys. I think you're going to see a little bit of hit and miss going forward or going through this year with them. On the offensive side, Darnell Wright is just a plug and play guy. You're going to put him on that right tackle spot, and he's just going to be there. He's going to dominate that position. Roschon Johnson is a guy who was asked to do everything at Texas, and I think had he gone to any other school except the school of Bijan Robinson, who's probably the best running back we've seen come out of the draft in 5 or more years, and if it wasn't for playing behind him, I think you would see Roschon Johnson as a second round guy, mid to late second round guy, and that's good for running back. That's really good. So I like what he can do. I think you're going to see him contribute early. Tyler Scott's probably not going to be asked to contribute early. He's a small guy, but he's a very Darnell Mooney-ish. And I don't know if they drafted a replacement for Darnell Mooney or if it was just, hey, we saw value there. But Tyler Scott's probably going to take a little time to get acclimated because he's got multiple wide receivers ahead of him. And I think it's going to take some time for him to really, take to the offense and shine. Most of these snaps are going to go to the veterans. And I'm going to lump Doug Kramer in with the draft class because he was last year's draft pick and he didn't play at all. I went back and watched tape of Doug Kramer, and I like Doug Kramer a lot. I think at some point people, when they're like, the Bears screwed up by not drafting John Michael Schmitz, a guy that they've only known for 4 or 5 weeks. I think you're going to be surprised. Doug Kramer is a good football player, and I think eventually he's going to win this starting center job. Maybe the Bears went, why do we need to draft somebody when we have a stopgap in Cody Whitehair, and we feel really good about Doug Kramer. So it's the opportunity is there for him. He's gonna have to earn his spot because Cody Whitehair is going to be the starting center for this year, and it would be awesome for the Bears and him if Doug Kramer can win this starting center job because he's a guy that's young and you got him locked up for several more years. Cody Whitehair, you could make him expendable because if Cody Whitehair doesn't get that center job, Jenkins and Nate Davis are your guards. You're not going to pay Cody Whitehair that much money to end up being a backup. So you can sort of move on from him and save yourself a lot of money in cap space. Let's see. Darnell Wright, plug and play. Gervon Dexter, I think you're going to see some good things from him, but he's going to be a guy that it's going to take a little bit to grow. Tyreek Stevenson, I think you're going to see him win that starting spot, but I think he's going to take him a little bit, to get used to. You're going to see him rookie cornerbacks, not named Sauce Gardner, just don't come in and dominate. So you're going to have to see him just gradually improve. Zach Pickens, I think, will be a good player on this team. I think he's going to get steady rotation. Roschon Johnson, he might win that starting running back spot, but if not, he's going to be a regular contributor. Tyler Scott, he's going to be a guy that they're drafting for the future. They're going to develop him. Same thing with Sewell. I think Terrell Smith is going to make this roster, but I don't know how much playing time he's going to get barring an injury. Travis Bell, I think they drafted him in the seventh as a developmental prospect. He's going to be, unless he just absolutely comes out swinging during training camp and the preseason games, I think he's going to be a practice squad player. And Kendall Williamson, the safety, I early odds, I think he makes the team as the backup safety. But that's, I think, a wide open competition. That's really all I have to say about the Bears. This is going to be a really cool training camp. This is I know there's people out there that are really split on what the Bears have done and what the job Ryan Poles is doing. But I'm going to tell you why I like it. He didn't draft guys that we all knew. He really has an eye for a certain type of player, and that's what he went and got. So, that was better or worse. He has a guy and then a system that he wants them to go in, and he sees a trait that he thinks that he can turn into something good. But he's picked players that I think have really good upside, and I haven't seen him just absolutely whiff on players. It's early, but free agency, he did go out and spend stupid money on players that overvalued because it's a really tight balance to walk of signing players to make you better, but not getting in financial cap hell. Like our friends from the North, Green Bay Packers, if you notice, they didn't really do anything in free agency because they couldn't. They're so handcuffed with salary cap issues that they couldn't. They're going to be able to sign this draft class, and then that's about it. The Bears this year have really good cap space. Next year they have really good cap space and room to make it more. You could easily cut an Eddie Jackson and a Cody Whitehair and collect that cap space. But I like what he's doing, and he's not just he's getting better at the starting positions, but he's also building depth. Is all of our defensive linemen from last year, except for one, are gone, and like his interior defensive linemen, and you're going to have a whole new class. You're churning it over. You're infusing talent. Is the defensive line where they want it to be? Probably not. You probably want to go and get another edge rusher, and I would expect that to happen. Was it 2 days after the draft? You can start signing players again, and they don't count towards the formula for compensatory picks. So look for the Bears to probably bring in a defensive edge veteran for that competition. But look at what the Bears are doing on the corner and the defensive backs. They've infused talent, but they've brought in new depth. So you drafted a couple of corners. One you expect to start, another one you expect to be a backup and improve on what you had last year. Your safeties, you had your starters. You brought in some guys that could be a backup. Linebacker, you brought in free agent players, but you also drafted players, so you have guys behind them. There's people out there that are like, we drafted a guy in a fifth round or whatever, and Noah Sewell was a fourth round or fifth round. We drafted Noah Sewell, and where's he going to play? He's not going to play as a starter. Yeah, but you've got to build depth, and that's been a huge problem the Bears have had over the last few years. They just had no depth. If somebody gets hurt, that becomes a huge weakness. You've got to have some sort of decent depth, and that's partly what Poles is doing. Is you've got to get more blue chip talent as on the starters, but you also need to build depth in the back end, and then that's what I see Ryan Poles doing, and I'm happy for that. I don't really have much else to say. It's a little bit slow this time of year, but we'll have Alex back next week, and we'll be talking about, fingers crossed, Connor Bedard as a Chicago Blackhawk. And I know it's not the draft yet, but it is the draft lottery, and whoever gets that number 1 spot, they're going for Connor Bedard. So hopefully next week we're talking about Connor Bedard as a Blackhawk. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, and ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.